Today on the High Republic Show, I'm at home on maternity leave, but y'all know me, I never miss a show. Today, we're taking a look back at all the reveals from New York Comic Con, chat about Phase 2 and the Roundtable, and what y'all really came here for, those sweet, sweet High Republic exclusives. No, I just gotta finish this quick. Hey, roll the intro, Kyle. I'll be right back.
For 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice.
Well, Christina seems like she has her hands full, and I owe her a favor anyway. Hello, friends! It's me, Kristin Baver, and while Christina, one of my favorite people, is helping the human being she made, I'll be filling in, since she did host an episode of This Week in Star Wars that you can watch here every Thursday afternoon for all of your breaking Star Wars news and informational needs. Anywho, I just got back from New York Comic Con with an oversized suitcase full of new High Republic reveals. At the High Republic panel, we learned the latest installment of the Edge of Balance manga, Precedent, is headed our way. Written by Daniel Jose Older and Tomio Ogata, the story will focus on the Wookiee Arkoff during his early days as a Jedi Knight, and we'll learn how his past is connected to not only the Battle of Dalna, but also Marchion Ro, or Marchion Ro to some of you. Precedent drops in May of 2023. And coming in July of 2023 is a High Republic Young Adult Anthology series, the first collection to feature all 9 High Republic authors in one place, sharing short stories that both tie up loose ends and give hints of what's to come in Phase 3. For fans of lightsabers, and let's be honest, who isn't? A brand new visual guide is coming in April called Star Wars: The High Republic Lightsaber Collection, which features a comprehensive collection of saber hilts from the comics and novels. Feast your eyes on these pages from Chronicles of the Jedi, a new illustrated in-universe guide that is simultaneously the perfect refresher for fans coming into the mix for Phase 2 and a sweet reward for those of us who've been ride or die from day one. Also announced Yoda and the Younglings, a new picture book from the Souls. That's right, Charles Soule is making the High Republic a family affair as he and his daughter Rosemary team up to tell a tale of what it means to be Jedi brave, featuring Yoda and Buriaga. I'm making a note to send that to Christina and her new youngling next October. I got you. And it wouldn't be a Comic-Con without cover reveals, now would it? We got our first looks at Cavan Scott's Path of Vengeance, Tessa Gratton's Quest for Planet X, Lydia Kay's Cataclysm, the cover of Dark Horse's Quest of the Jedi, a first look at the Twinkle Sisters, and variant covers for Marvel's The Blade #4 and the variant cover for Marvel's High Republic #5. But you know what's more fun than hearing about New York Comic Con? Seeing it for yourself. I just got back to deliver to you, High Republic superfans, this fun-filled segment. Enjoy. We're here at New York Comic Con for the epic launch of Star Wars: The High Republic Phase 2. We've got the authors here, they're signing their books, there's an amazing panel, and there's even a huge billboard in Times Square. Let's check it out.
We are here today to talk about the High Republic.
You don't mess around with the Force. And who messes around with the Force? The Jedi.
We found Avar Chris. This is so exciting. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
Excellent. How excited are you for Phase 2 of the High Republic?
I am extremely excited. I'm obsessed with the Jedi and everything.
I see that.
So I'm just like super excited to know just more of just everything.
I loved High Republic Phase 1, and Phase 2 has been so great so far, and this is sort of like a more intimate way into the story.
I did not expect just how nice they would be, you know? They were just the nicest people in the world. The fact that they're here signing autographs for everybody is just great. I loved it.
That's the beauty of the franchise.
That is the beauty of it.
So many rich characters. We could go back and forth in the universe. I love it.
As you all know, the High Republic Phase 2 has launched this week. Officially, we are back.
The Twinkle Sisters do have names. It's Delphine and Camille. I'm not sure they know which is which.
Dexter Jetster is back, not just as a cameo, but he is fully a part of the team in this wonderful series. Thank you.
We're here to launch Phase 2. Yep. How excited are you to be here and for these books to finally be out?
I'm excited to be here with him.
Yes!
Because, you know, we've worked together for a couple of years, a lifetime.
It's been very exciting. Everyone has been so welcoming and let me have a really good time.
I think it's really nice that people are really embracing the books, but we get to see that.
How has your interaction today been on the panel with the fans, just in general?
The fans have been super encouraging, and it's just been wonderful. Star Wars book fans are my favorite.
It's been a bit of a blur for me. You know, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and so to be on this other side of things where I'm creating, it's just made it just incredible.
When you get nervous and buzzy, just think, what would Yaddle do?
If only I could do what Yaddle does.
I loved you in San Diego! Are you super jazzed for the High Republic Phase 2?
Super excited for Phase 2, especially since it's apparently going back in time to before Phase 1.
Oh, I don't want to say it's going to be better than the first phase, but I'm excited for this Age of Exploration.
Go High Republic. I'm so excited.
For Light and Life.
Yes, for Light and Life. For Light and Life.
I made this with my friends back home, and I do the concept design, and I hired her.
This is amazing.
Thank you all for reading and supporting these books. It really means the world to us. You know, everyone up here pours their hearts and souls into these titles. We're really, really proud of the work that they've done. You know, want you to know that whether it's the High Republic titles or any of our other Star Wars titles that we're working on, we're doing this for you guys. And as long as you keep reading, we'll keep making them. So thank you for reading, thank you for supporting the books, thank you for supporting these authors. May the Force be with you.
You want to be the host now?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to the High Republic show. Sorry, Christina. Sorry, Kristen. It's now me.
Hello and welcome to the first official Star Wars The High Republic show roundtable in person. Today we are joined by Rob Simpson, Senior Editor in Publishing.
Hi.
We've got Kelsey Sharpe, Junior Creative Executive.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, Kelsey. And we've got Phil Szostak, Creative Art Manager.
Hey.
Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us. Great being here around the round
Look
table.
at our table.
Yes, literal round table.
The literal round table, the Knights of the Round Table. But we're here today to talk about the beginning of Phase 2 of Star Wars The High Republic. I'm so excited. I can't believe we're here at this moment already. So let's dive into it. What is new about Wave 1 of Phase 2 of The High Republic?
In the grand Star Wars tradition, we started with the middle of the story, and now we're going back to what came before.
It's very Star Wars.
Exactly.
A prequel of a prequel.
Exactly. But just like the prequels, I think if you read Phase 1, you're going to find a lot of cool connections and plot threads that tie into it, but also it's a great jumping on point because with Phase 2, we're going back 150 years. It's brand new characters, a lot of new locations, but some locations that we know, both from Phase 1 as well as from the saga, like Jeddah, which I'm sure Rob can talk about more later. Phase 2 is really exciting because all of the High Republic is the height of the Jedi, right? It's a Jedi being the heroes we know them to be, saving people, going on missions. But in Phase 2, it's really all about sort of expansion, communication, connection, because hyperspace travel exists, of course, but it's not as reliable. I mean, even in the time of Solo, we know with the Kessel Run, like charting a path through hyperspace can sometimes be extremely perilous. And at this point in time, there are fewer known hyperspace lanes that people can really rely on. So what we see are both independent hyperspace prospectors, both working on their own, as well as these sort of family conglomerates, names like Graf and Santeca that you might know. They're out there, you know, sort of finally charting safe routes from the core out to the outer rim, even out to parts of the mid-rim. And what that means is that for the first time, these sort of far-flung peoples and planets are now really in close connection with the core, or they're making these connections that they couldn't make before. And the Jedi and the Republic are sort of the tip of the spear for that, because we have these Pathfinder teams who are going out where Republic and Jedi are working together, working with these new droids, the EX communication droids, and what they do is sort of travel out to these far-flung locations and then shoot a droid essentially back in the direction of the core so that they can actually send messages to each other, because there aren't reliable communications networks at this point.
When you describe that, I just hear that like R2 screaming sound. Like that's just what I assume is happening,
Yes.
but in space where they can't hear the droid scream.
Yeah, that was actually when that sound was first recorded, and they realized like, oh, this will be useful. Let's put that in Astromech.
Yes, I love it. So with Wave 1, we've already had Path of Deceit come out, Quest for the Hidden City, and also just recently, very, very recently, Marvel's Star Wars The High Republic, issue number 1, the relaunch. Let's talk a little bit about some of these story points. What can we expect when we're diving into Path of Deceit? What can we expect when we're diving into the High Republic?
Well, the fun thing about the first issue of, as Kelsey was saying, the first issue of the new run of the High Republic is we're meeting everybody for the first time. It's a new beginning, it's a great jumping on point, but it's also getting to see the Jedi in a different atmosphere than they've been before. You've seen space travel, of course, in Star Wars for a very long time, but with these Pathfinder teams and with these far outposts that they're going to, the Jedi are really in a position of discovering new planets and new civilizations for the first time themselves. And in our lead Jedi for this story, Vildar Mac, he's going to a place where the Jedi have been before, but he hasn't been there himself before. So he's walking into this atmosphere of Jedha, we've seen in Rogue One, for the first time. He's meeting all these different cultures for the first time, and he's meeting a lot of people who have different points of view about the Force than he's grown up with. And though he's a Jedi Knight, he's not the expert on everything to do with the Force that he thinks he is once he starts meeting these people. So that's a lot of fun to play with.
No, and that's been something really interesting in this first wave of books and comics, that you feel like the Jedi know so much about the Force and are so steeped in it. And then you learn through these books and comics that they're not the only perspective. They don't have the only point of view, as it turns out, in the galaxy. And there's a lot of different views on the Force and how to wield it, or if you even should wield it, and a lot of really interesting questions that I had never thought to ask before.
And
really
even between
fantastic.
two Jedi, watching his relationship grow with Maddie, the new Jedi that he encounters, the relationship between Maddie and Vildar is distinctly different from the relationship we saw between Keeve and Skier, where you really had a Jedi starting out on her journey in Keeve with Maddie. Maddie's been a Jedi for a while. She has a different master. Vildar's not there to be her master, though they do work closely together. And just that Maddie knows more about how life runs on Jedha than Vildar does is so much fun, because here comes this, storied older Jedi who of course knows everything, and he's immediately taken down 10 pegs because he clearly doesn't know everything of what's going on this planet. So that's just a fun relationship to watch, the balance between the two of them.
Yes, I also find her deeply relatable because she's a nervous talker, and so she's just constantly yammering on to poor Vildar, who just got off the equivalent of like a red eye to get to Jedha, and he's so exhausted. He's got like space jet lag. It's wonderful to see those kind of two energies and how different it is from Keeve and Skier.
As a young woman, what's really interesting to see about both Keeve and Maddie, or I guess I should say sort of a young woman, the contrast between Keeve and Maddie is that, Keeve starts off very competent, a very skilled Padawan, but totally insecure. Everybody can sort of see that she's ready to take this step, except for her. And Maddie is almost the opposite. Like Rob was saying, Maddie is sort of the local expert on Jedha. She knows the different factions. She knows how to get where she's going, and she has a voice that she's not afraid to use. But it almost feels like Vildar and some other Jedi almost want to sort of hold her back. And so seeing her butt up against them occasionally and say like, hey, I didn't need you to step in for me there. I actually had that under control. I found really refreshing and cool.
It's really nice to see that kind of, immediacy of learning on Vildar's part, and where he knows that he could very easily overstep his bounds and overstep his realm of knowledge about things. And he's willing to step back and be like, okay, I'll offer if asked, but if not, I'll kind of step back and listen to what's going on from Maddie and from other wielders of the Force as he starts to meet the members of the Convocation. And it's a totally different perspective on how do you balance power and balance authority when everyone is, it's like when you leave high school and go to college and, you were everybody was the smartest person in their high school, and then they suddenly go to a new place. Everybody in the Convocation is an expert on the Force from a different point of view.
Can we talk a little bit more about the Convocation of the Force, how it links up to the Guardians of the Wills, also on Jedha, and the Jedi Order, and maybe even the Path of the Open Hand, because I think all of those things kind of work in concert in Phase 2.
Well, working in concert is an interesting way to look at it, because really those other groups that you named all come together through the Convocation. The Convocation is a place where everyone needs to come in on equal footing, where the Guardians of the Wills have a very specific vision of their relationship to the Force and their relationship to history as it's played out over the centuries. The Convocation is sort of there to help them understand that there are other people, other civilizations who have come to that feeling about the Force in a different way.
Yeah, I think the Convocation is probably my favorite part of Phase 2 so far, because I think, the Jedi are wonderful and they capture our imaginations, and who hasn't swung around a lightsaber as a kid? But I think as you start to get older, you start to think about, well, what if you have the Force, but you weren't found by the Jedi, or you weren't raised in a temple? And I think this is kind of a first peek into the fact that, yeah, there are other factions in the galaxy. There are other, cults of mystery. There are other ways of understanding the Force and using or not using the Force. One really interesting group that we'll meet in Tessa Gratton and Justina Ireland's Path of Deceit is the Path of the Open Hand. They're interesting because they are actually a group of non-Force users, specifically by design. So they're a pilgrim group. They're based in a commune on the planet Dalna, which readers may know from Phase 1, but this is previous in Dalna's past. It's a very quiet pastoral planet with a small settlement, and the Path basically preaches the idea that the Force has to be free, that the Force exists, they believe in it, they believe in the fate of the Force and the power of the Force, but they think that to control it or to direct it is almost like putting up artificial dams in a river when the river wants to flow freely. We'll meet many characters associated with the Path, from their leader, the Mother, and her sort of right-hand man, the Herald, but also a young woman named Marta Rowe. Marta is a very sweet, very passionate young woman who really believes in what the Path of the Open Hand preaches. And so when she meets a Jedi Padawan, Kevmo Zing, it's sort of the first time that either of them have had their worldviews challenged, right? Because Kevmo was raised by the Jedi. Kevmo is such a bright, happy, loving boy who just wants to be everybody's best friend. And I think he's really our perfect intro to the Path of the Open Hand, because if you watch Star Wars, if you read Star Wars, you want to identify with the Jedi, right? You want to be like, but these are our heroes. Of course they're right. And so I think your first instinct would be to say, no, the Path of the Open Hand is wrong. But having Kevmo as your perspective character who's so open-hearted, so open-minded, he really wants to understand where Marta is coming from. And so that certainly helped me when I was reading the book, because following along with Kevmo and Marta, they really both challenge each other and they both make great points, right? Marta has always been taught that if the Force is manipulated in one place, then that causes a disruption somewhere else. So that an act that a Jedi performs that they might construe as heroic, well, the Force has to balance itself somehow. And I think when Kevmo encounters that idea, he wants to sort of reject it, but the more he thinks about it, the more he wonders if maybe there's some truth in what the Path of the Open Hand sort of preaches, and maybe there is a middle way between what the Path does and what the Jedi do.
And you make some excellent points about Kevmo, who I love. But I think it's also just a mirror to healthy debate, and how that you can have healthy debate, you can have opposing viewpoints, and it doesn't have to always end up in a Jedi versus Sith type war. Right. You can have conversations, and there's just different ways of looking at things.
Or unhealthy debate, as we see in the comics.
Yeah, we see in the comics. Yeah,
it can get kind of nasty sometimes between these different groups.
Yeah, the first issue, has some really beautiful art by Ariana Andito and Andrea Braccardo, who really bring Jedha to life. I mean, we've seen Jedha, in Rogue One, but there's this great moment at the beginning of the first issue where Vildar's coming in and he's flying over Jedha and he's seeing it from the sky, from above. And, we get to see the full sweep of the city, and just seeing the design from the film brought to life in this comic again was just so much fun. And then walking out onto the street almost immediately into a knockdown drag out argument between, groups with differing points of view. Second they see a Jedi, they have, apparently very strong opinions about Jedi.
Who's in the middle of that fight? Vildar.
Jedha's the perfect place for that, because Rogue One really teased out the idea that there's different groups on this place, and now we're returning to that place and kind of filling in that history a bit more, getting to know these different groups. And
it was a lot of fun working with you on that, because being able to supply the Marvel artists with the design work that was done for Rogue One that you were able to unearth that people hadn't seen before.
Exactly, yeah. There's a lot of things, deep background characters that we have great studio photography to send to the artists.
And city designs, seeing the buildings, seeing the streets, it really made it feel like a three-dimensional real world.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, that you only really catch a glimpse of in the film. We're really able to kind of plus out with these comics.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a great segue, because I want to talk more about the design from a pure design perspective. How do you take what we know of the High Republic from Phase 1 and now devolve it a little bit further for Phase 2?
I think it's the same challenge that Doug Chiang had to meet with the prequel films. How do you take that step back? I mean, in that case, it was only 20 years from what we know. And in the case of Phase 1, it was how many years from Episode 1?
200.
200 years, and now it's another 150 years. So it's much larger spans of time. And what we're doing, as we discussed with Phase 1, is diving into a lot of unused concept art, especially in the world of vehicles. And then with characters, it's a definite de-evolution of a lot of those costumes that we're very familiar with from Phase 1, something a little more subdued, darker tones, not quite so much of that kind of gold filigree and piping, less fancy and more practical, more rugged, and something that'll help the Jedi kind of blend in these worlds, I think, more.
Yeah, and I think that extends to the ships as well. They seem very rugged, utilitarian, a little more of that hunk-of-junk feel of cobbled togetherness than we saw, with the High Republic Phase 1, but also for sure from what we saw in the prequels where Naboo doesn't cobble together anything, it seems. And here we are with Jedi on these pilgrimages, it seems like. They're exploring the galaxy. So how do you bake in utilitarianism into a ship design?
Well, what we did, we kind of cheated a little bit because we just went into our archive, dug into that and found 50 contenders. And then from those found the comms and Pathfinder ships, which were designs from episodes 7 and 8, actually, resistance transports. And those resistance vehicles, very much like the rebellion vehicles, could be decades or even centuries old. So it works perfectly. And you look at them and you know, okay, this is like a utility vehicle. This is not something that's like handcrafted, artisan, beautiful thing like the Vector or like the Naboo ships that you mentioned. This is something that its function reads really clearly to the viewer. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and it needs to, because those are the ships that these, Pathfinders are taking out into the galaxy, sort of taking multiple leaps of faith and saying, okay, well, this path that I'm charting seems clear. I hope that it is. And so I have to imagine that those ships go take a beating in hyperspace, a lot of rough entries and exits from those lanes.
Absolutely.
Just much more about functionality than something, fancy or that's going to impress anyone. It's,
I was going to say, when we're working with the folks at Marvel and the other writers and artists who are working on this, when writers like Cavan or Charles Soule come to us and ask, what kind of ship could transport, 300 people and livestock and, weapons, machinery to build a settlement on another planet. It's good to be able to have those conversations with you and be like, okay, this ship is perfectly designed for that kind of a thing. And if it doesn't exist, to work together to build what that kind of ship would look like.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're also getting to see, or at least read about, the Gaze Electric as it's being built, which was a fantastic surprise. I was alone in my apartment reading this and screaming at the book because I didn't expect that. But I want to talk more about the Path of the Open Hand as well, because this is a really interesting design. I don't know that we've seen a Force cult before. I don't know.
Definitely factions like we saw in Rogue One, but not necessarily a cult.
I like to think of it as being more commune than like Netflix true crime.
Sure.
I'm sure they wouldn't like to be called.
They would not probably agree to that. Exactly. But the Path of the Open Hand is a really interesting group to me. We got our first hint at some of the art a couple months back. We saw Marta Rowe for the first time. Gorgeous design. How do you take what we know of the species with Marchion Rowe, or Marchion, change that up for Marta Rowe, who is quite different from the other Rowe that we know?
In Eye of the Storm, we got to see a little bit of Rowe's homeworld and his society, but it was the society on the decline. And getting to see, Marta and see some aspects of the path and how they connect to Marchion species is going to open people's eyes a lot, I think, to how intricate the thought process went into building that group and what their connection to the Force is and what their connection to governing the universe. I mean, the Jedi operate very much as a democracy, and the Sith, maybe as more of an autocracy.
That's what I was gonna say, yeah.
But the people who follow the path follow it out of devotion, out of this strong belief in what Marta represents. So I think just seeing that level of connection is different than what we've done before.
It strikes me as almost if you allow the Jedi to have attachments to each other, what does that look like? With that added layer of, we don't use the Force, we give to the Force. Just a really interesting group. We also saw the mother on the cover of Path of Deceit. She did not look at all what I was expecting somehow. And yet when you read the description of just how the air in the room changes when she walks in and everyone just suddenly wants to do her bidding. I see it in that design.
The mother's a really compelling and charismatic figure. She's not the founder of the Path of the Open Hand, but she is their current leader. And what she's done for them is she sort of envisions a place for them beyond Delna. She's going to take the Path of the Open Hand out to the stars. And the way that she's doing that is by constructing this ship known as the Gaze Electric. And that's going to be how the Path enters the galaxy and spreads their message. It's how we connect to the convocation, which we'll see on Jeddah, because Marta Rowe is told by Kevmo Zinc that there's this group of Force users, Force worshippers, who are going to be meeting on Jeddah regularly to talk through all matters of the Force and see where their philosophies meet. And that really energizes Marta as a young follower of the path and of the Mother, because she feels like that aligns so perfectly with the Mother's vision of spreading their message to the galaxy. The Jedi are such a dominant voice from Marta's perspective that she really wants to be there on Jeddah to see it happen and to be a voice for the path of the open hand and to take this word that the Mother has passed on and kind of proselytize it out to the entire galaxy.
But this is just the beginning of Wave 1 of Phase 2. We've barely scratched the surface. There's still so much more to come. What else do we have coming that you're excited about?
I'll throw out a very probably too early pitch for George Mann's audio original with Del Rey, Battle for Jeddah. One of the things that's been so great about the High Republic is that it's really delivering exciting stories in every format that we publish, and those audio originals have been a real highlight for me.
I'm really looking forward to some of the new comics that are coming. You know, we've already announced we're going to be doing more High Republic adventure stories, but the fun part of that is that Daniel Jose Older is really giving us a look into the underworld and sort of piracy on the high seas kind of feel of, you know, what's going on out there as this phase looks to explore founding new frontiers and exploring new planets. You know, that comes with it, you know, people looking to make a fast buck, people looking to, you know, cut corners, and seeing those kinds of characters, you know.
The scoundrels we love.
The scoundrels that we love. And then over on the Marvel side, you know, I mentioned Charles, he's going to be doing a miniseries called The Blade. So we're going to get to learn more about Porter now 150 years earlier in his life. And it's just got some incredible, beautiful artwork by Marco Castillo that I can't wait for people to start seeing. So those two really have me energized.
I love that connection point too, though. You know, obviously Phase 2 is the prequel to Phase 1, but there are a few characters who are still alive, still kicking around, and we get to see them a little bit younger.
And from the novels, you know, to the comics, to everything that we're doing, you know, you get to see all of the luminous authors, you know, working together again and new authors brought in to be working with them. Just watching that family of writers grow, that family of creators grow, and new artists, you know, coming into it has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I can't wait to read Convergence. Very excited.
Yeah, having Zoraida Cordova writing a full adult Del Rey novel for us in the High Republic, I think that was on all of our wish lists. So, and it's a great story.
All right. So much to look forward to. So much to look forward to. So excited for Phase 2 of the High Republic. What are you personally most excited for?
It's a big part of what we do generally is we know the secrets, and just waiting to hear the reactions.
See people's reaction.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Kelsey, what about you?
Well, what I love about Star Wars is the romance and the politics. I feel like Path of Deceit covers me on romance, and Convergence is where all the politics happen, because we're going to see Iram and Arona. Of course, we know that those two planets are at war at this point, so that book is literally putting the wars in Star Wars.
All right, I think that's everything. Thank you all so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you all at the round table.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, it's been a while since Christina's asked some of Lucasfilm's finest, your most pressing High Republic questions, and because I'm hosting and have unlimited power, I used my own show, This Week in Star Wars, this Thursday and every Thursday afternoon, to solicit your questions. And now, it's time for me to get some answers. So come with me back to New York Comic Con to answer your queries.
Well, are you ready to answer some social questions?
Absolutely, let's go.
Dark Sapiens asks, will Phase 2 also be focused on a few singular events, or will each novel cover a longer period of time?
Phase 2 actually covers a shorter period of time. What we've done with this phase is we've tried to make it a little more contained. So if you're only reading one format, the middle grade or the YA, etc., you get a complete story, but there's still that interconnectivity, and there are still those key linchpin moments, such as the Battle of Jeddah and the Battle of Dalma.
Are you ready for another one?
I'm ready for more questions.
This one comes from Drea Targaryen. Are we going to get more animations?
Yes.
This one comes from Kristin Baver.
Okay.
When are we going to get more animations?
Right now.
Ooh, all right.
150 years before the Great Disaster, the High Republic embodied the ideals of exploration, technology, and peace. Living humbly on a commune on the planet Dalna is the path of the open hand. At the center of this devout group is the Mother, their leader. She is lovingly surrounded by the path's followers, the elders, the children, and the littles, and aided by her herald. The path believes the use and manipulation of the Force is dangerous. Doing so could have catastrophic results on the galaxy, and the Jedi, with their innate abilities, are a threat to the natural order of things. With their values disregarded, the Path seeks a way to uphold their tenets. But they may have gone too far. Trouble awaits in the High Republic.
All right, I hope you're sitting down because I have a whole boatload of reveals. We all know and love Yoda and Grogu, but you know who's too often absent from those adoring conversations? Yaddle. Well, that changes today, because we have your first look at Yaddle in the High Republic, who just so happens to play a very important role during the end of Phase 2. Next up, we have a look at Sky Graf, part of the Graf prospecting clan. 15-year-old Sky is a talented tech genius and pilot determined to be the first to the mysterious Planet X. And if I can editorialize for a bit, that gray streak in the hair is working for you, Sky. It's working. Also, we've got your first look at concept art for Barash, a Jedi honor-bound to fight alongside the Blade of Bardata himself, Porter Engle. Dressed in all white, Barash shares a bond with Porter, whom she's known since childhood, and together they use their special abilities to protect settlers across the different frontiers of the galaxy. It's a little like Kristin and Christina using our special abilities to deliver the Star Wars intel. Case squared. If you thought we were done there, you're not even close.
We've got covers for Marvel's The High Republic number 5 by Yannick Paquette and the variant for The Blade number 3 by Lanil Francis Yu.
But Kristin, you say, I want to know what's inside one of those Phase 2 High Republic books. Can't say no to you.
We also have a look at Sav Malagan, as well as their appearance inside Dark Horse's Star Wars The High Republic Adventures number 1.
And finally, a look inside a book near and dear to my heart, The Art of Star Wars The High Republic, which features the behind-the-scenes story of the making of Phase 1, full-color artwork, and never-before-seen designs, and it was written by me, Kristin Baver. But best of all, it's available at all major booksellers on November 8th. As always, for more on these reveals, check out starwars.com/The High Republic. Well, that wraps up another fun-filled episode of The High Republic Show. We'll be back in December with a brand new episode hosted by Christina Ariel. Until next time, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all of our social handles, and for Light and Life, I'm Kristin Baver.